Tom, Marissa, thanks. And Senator Shaheen, thanks for joining us live here.
Nice to be with you.
I know you just flew back in from these votes today. Senator, you were a key architect of that deal to reopen the government after the 43-day government shutdown in exchange for getting this vote there on the Senate today. Given how the vote ended today, with the expiring health care subsidies, do you have any regrets about that deal?
I don't. My regret is that we need to keep working to make sure that we can help those people who can't afford their health insurance now because those tax credits are expiring. And I think there's still an opportunity to do that. I think we've got to get together with like-minded Republicans, and we've got to sit down and negotiate a compromise.
And now, when the government shutdown ended with that deal, at the time the deal was made, there was some fury within your own party because there was nothing concrete about the ACA subsidies that were expiring. There was just this essentially vote in the Senate. That was it. Nothing guaranteed in the House at the time. In your chamber, Senator Chris Murphy saying we could have won, public was on our side. Senator Sanders saying we abandoned the demands, that makes a horrific situation worse. Senator Warren calling it a terrible mistake. Your own daughter saying she would have voted no on that deal because there was nothing guaranteed in the House. So at the end, with now seeing this result, were they right?
No, they're wrong. Because there was never any inclination on the part of our Republican colleagues to agree until we reopen the government. The fact that we were able to reopen the government meant we could have negotiations around trying to extend the tax credits. And that's what we need to do now. We need to get back to the negotiating table because there's real urgency. These tax credits are going to expire. People are seeing their premium rate increases double, triple, in some cases more than that. And so we've got to get this done, and we need to think about extending the ability for people to enroll in the marketplace so that there is an opportunity for insurance companies to help make sure that people can have those tax credits and be able to afford their premiums.
And Senator, we've seen some of these numbers. Actually, the Hearst Television data team came up with some for us. For New Hampshire family of four, who makes the median income, give or take, their premiums will go up from about $6,600 a year to north of $10,000 a year. What is your message to them tonight with the lack of any concrete solution there in Washington?
That we've got to keep working on this, and I hope that they will contact their elected officials and let them know that this needs to get done. Unfortunately, our Republican colleagues weren't willing to extend those tax credits. That's been the issue. So now I'm hoping that since the votes failed today, that we can get back to the negotiating table. We can come up with a compromise that will really provide some relief for people. Because if we don't, we know that about 4 million people are going to lose their health insurance. That's going to have ramifications throughout the whole healthcare system in terms of people going to emergency rooms, raising rates for even people who have employer-sponsored health insurance. So there's urgency to get this done, and I hope our Republican colleagues will come to the table, will help engage in bargaining and help work on a compromise. I think the American people understand that they're the reason we haven't gotten these tax credits extended.
Now, to that end, these tax credits, these are the enhanced subsidies, were always designed to expire. There was a 1-year deal in the American Rescue Act, and then there was the 3-year deal in the Inflation Reduction Act. But they were always set to be...
But there was an effort to extend those premium tax credits. We voted 4 times in this last year, and I proposed 4 amendments to do that, and unfortunately our Republican colleagues refused to support that. So we are here, unfortunately, because President Trump and the Republican majorities in the House and Senate have refused to extend those tax credits. Now it's time for them to come to the bargaining table and to help us work out a compromise that everyone can agree to.
Because, Senator, they also point out that some households close to $600,000 are receiving some of these tax credits at this point.
Now,
they point
92% of people who receive the tax credits earn $200,000 or less. The average salary or the average income for a single person who's getting those tax credits is about $32,000 a year. So those are red herrings in terms of what people need. About 50% of people who benefit from the tax credits who are going to be hurt by this are small business owners and their employees.
And if I may, Senator...
In fact, 76% of tax credit beneficiaries are in states that Donald Trump won in the last election. So there's a real benefit to the Republicans to come to the table to get this done.
But do you see their larger point that needing to heavily subsidize the Affordable Care Act indicates that something fundamentally isn't working with the ACA?
Well, in New Hampshire, for the last 4 years, we have had more people who have been able to get health insurance, and the cost of premiums have gone down each year over the last 4 years. So I think there is work we need to do to address the cost of health care, but in New Hampshire, it's very important for us to make sure that people can have access to health insurance. That's what the ACA marketplace does.
So just briefly, you think the ACA is working?
I think it's working for those people who are enrolled. Now, we have more work to do, and unfortunately, over the years, the Republican majorities have taken the funding that we were going to use for delivery system reform to address the costs of health care, and they've used that money for other things. So we need to go back to the table now. We need to get additional changes to make sure we can lower the cost of health care for everyone.
Okay, Senator Shaheen, thanks for joining us live today. Appreciate it.